I have the privilege of introducing our director, Jennifer May, who has just been married, and now she is Jennifer May Alaferis. Beautiful name, and we wish you much luck in your married life. Jennifer, can you please fill us in on your career with the library thus far?
Sure. I started when I was 18 years old. I worked summers here as a library page, as a summer worker while I was in college. Basically, I worked 2 shifts on most days. I worked the morning shift in the children's department with the extended story hour program that we run in the summertime. And then I would take a couple hours off and come back and do like a late afternoon or a night shift. And that was upstairs in the adult circulation area, working shelving books and doing light clerical work. I didn't think I was going to become a librarian. That wasn't my plan, but I really loved it. I fell in love with the library, with the Secaucus Library, and with librarianship. I ended up changing. Actually, Kathy Steffens had at one point called me into her office and asked me if I was going to consider getting an MLS. And I was embarrassed to tell her at the time that I didn't even know what an MLS was. It's a Master's in Library Science. And I said, well, I'll think about that, and I wasn't going to really think about it. But then I found myself in the library more and more. I was at the library in Secaucus. I was working at my college library up in Massachusetts. And even when I was doing my student teaching, I was hanging out in the school library all the time. So it just clicked, and it was right. So when I graduated college in 2001, I went directly into grad school at Rutgers and got my MLS in the winter of 2003. Fortunately, that lined up perfectly with the opening of this new library building. And I started my first day as a full-time librarian at the reference desk in this building, January 4th, 2003. I was head of reference for about 5 years, and when Kathy retired in early 2009, I became the next library director. And I've been director now for almost 6 years.
And a good choice indeed, Jen, if I do say so myself. Being director of a library is quite an awesome responsibility. What was your first order of business upon being named director, and what do you consider your primary responsibility?
Okay, so when I first became director, my goal was that I was not going to do any changes to the library for at least 6 months. I just wanted to see how everything worked, make sure that I had a feel for what I wanted to change before I changed anything. Life doesn't always work that way, though, and there were things that came up very quickly. We were in the middle of the recession, so we dealt with a lot of budget stuff very early on, a lot of legislative changes. So that quickly became my first order of business. However, my secondary first order of business was that I wanted to kind of try to say yes to any request that came in. Instead of thinking about what ifs or what could happen, you always do have to think about that to some extent. I wanted to have, a yes attitude towards requests that came in, towards people who want to run different programs, so long as it was a safe thing, and so long as it wouldn't damage the library, and so long as we could afford to do it, I wanted to be able to say yes. So we did, and that brought some really interesting, fun programs into the library, some services we never thought we'd offer. We've done programs on the history of dance. We've done programs on cooking. We've done all sorts of very interesting, different stuff. And that's always kind of been my attitude, that if it's something that the community wants, we should try and do it. So that was my first couple orders of business. My prime responsibility at the library on a day-to-day basis is to keep things running smoothly, to keep things running within budget, and to plan for our funding. On a more long-term basis, it's really to keep the library relevant and to keep it in use, and to make sure that it always is here for the community.
That's a job, or 2 or 3 in itself. Jennifer, what do you foresee? Oh wait, before I ask you that, how would you explain the importance of this library to a potential donor?
Okay, I think that this library is an invaluable resource to the St. Lucas town and to the community at large. I think that we've got a great combination of cultural programming, educational programming, and business resources. And that, really making a donation to our library is making an investment in the community. We use that donation to buy materials that will help our children learn, that will also help business people in the community to start their own businesses, to branch out, to try new things, to increase their value. And I think that, by giving to us, you're making an investment that's going to give back to the community further down the road. So
Very good. I would donate just by what you said.
Thank you. I told you to, that.
Jen, what experience, good or bad, stands out in your mind?
I would say that looking back over the 10 years, or 11 now that we've been in this building, one of the most vibrant memories for me is the building during Hurricane Sandy. We were closed on the day that Sandy started. I believe that was a Monday. And at about 12:35 on Monday night, I got a phone call from Lou Minervini, who is the head of maintenance here at the library, saying that the building was going to be opening as an emergency shelter, and that they needed people to man it, to man the desk, and to be here. So, because at the time only lived a couple blocks away, an emergency vehicle was sent to pick me up, and Lou and I spent the entire night here as people came in. We had about 40 to 45 people here the first night, including 2 dogs and a parrot.
Oh.
It was a wild night. We all were working on very little sleep. There was an awful lot going on around us. We had emergency personnel from the OEM coming in and out of the building with updates every 20 or 30 minutes. They were also coming in to kind of get refreshed, have a cup of coffee, see what was going on. We were fortunate enough that we kept power throughout, and we actually kept internet access with Wi-Fi throughout the 5 days that we were open. We were open for 5 days and nights straight. We were not open as a library, however. We were open with the intent that we were providing an emergency service, so we didn't have an internet line to check books out. But somewhere around day 2 or so, we decided to let people take books out anyway on honor system, and they came back. People were really at their best during crisis. It was a very traumatic night, but I think that we served a really important role in the community, and I hope that, should there be disasters in the future, that we would be able to step up and take on that role again.
That was very interesting, Jen. Throughout the disaster plans that we came up with, you never think of a 5 day straight disaster.
Absolutely not. And, staffing was an issue, but because a lot of our staff were affected by the hurricane, their houses were under 2 or 3 feet of water.
Oh.
I had phone calls from staff members who had goldfish swimming in their backyard, and they weren't able to make it in. So really, it was a core number of 5 or 6 staff members and OEM personnel who staffed the building through those 24-hour cycles night after night. What was really interesting about was the people that we got to meet, because they weren't people who often come in the library. We had several people who had told us that they had never been in the library before that night. And I hope that, maybe they found the library a welcoming place and that it encouraged them to come back in the future under better circumstances.
Well, that's great. That's a wonderful story. I'm sure you will see a lot more activity based on these weather forecasts. Okay, now I'll ask you that question. What do you foresee for the future of libraries?
I think the library is definitely trending away from being a collection space, which is where you just keep hundreds of thousands of books. I think we'll always have books and materials for the public to borrow, but I think that our trend is going more towards being an educational and cultural space for the community. We're trying to provide more technology services, more children's programs, more adult programs, especially classroom-based programs. We've had a really successful literacy and citizenship program that we're running again in 2015. And I see that being the trend, that we're going to become an adult learning space, a cultural space, and also hopefully a workspace for some of our freelance workers, for some of our consultants, for some of our small business people who need the technology resources that we can provide and are unable to do that at home. That's what I hope to see the library become. I think we'll make that transition. I think there'll always be books, there'll always be audiovisual materials for the public, but I think that overall our mission is going to trend towards us being a provider of services and programming rather than just the collections.
Well, they always say libraries are more than just books. You've certainly made it that. Jen, what words or thoughts would you like to leave us with? Keeping in mind that someone might be watching you 30 years from now or tomorrow, you never know. What's on your mind? What would you like to say?
Well, two things. One thing I'd like to say is that if you're watching this 30 years from now and you're in a library and you're wondering if libraries are always going to be there and if they're always going to be relevant, we're wondering the same thing. And 30 years ago, they were wondering the same thing. Libraries will always be relevant to the community. They're always going to be at the heart of the community, I believe. My other thing is that I always think of our library by the title of the book that's here in this building. And the book is by Elizabeth Berg, and it's called We Are All Welcome Here. And to me, that's the core of the library. The library is a place where everyone is welcome, regardless of your age, regardless of your background, regardless of why you're here to use the library. It's a welcoming space. It's a space of acceptance and tolerance and hopefully a community. Where we're trying to build a community here. It's the heart of a larger community, but it also is a community within itself, and we hope that everyone always feels welcome.
Well, I'm sure they will, and I just want to thank you for participating in this 80th anniversary. You don't look old enough, Jen, but neither do I hope. So thank you again for your thoughts and your words.
Great, and I just want to say thank you to Kathy Steffens and to Fred for arranging these interviews. Kathy for doing all the research and legwork behind the interviews. And I think this is a great program, and I can't wait to see the finished result, and I know 30 years from now people will still be looking at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.